a proven scam artist, a chewed up piece of chicken, and a cat litter box. How in the world did these things tie together, and why should you care?
And I spit it out. And what landed on the plate was a piece of chicken and gristle and skin that was a perfect part.
And I went to clean the kitty box, and I have 2 plastic cups. I scooped the clean litter, and it made a shape of a heart.
The art of manipulating humans has been around for centuries and often entails various techniques in doing so. Palm readers and phrenologists, those that read the bumps on the skull for personal insight to their victim, have been prevalent since the 18th and 19th centuries. The great magician Harry Houdini documented manipulative tactics utilized by spiritualists and supposed mediums in the earliest 20th century. And we don't have to look too far in the modern era to see supposed psychics and mind readers performing much the same.
All right. And is there a D, like a Daniel, David, like there's a big D. So for me, it's initials. It's usually months of the year, like December being important.
Who is the MR name? Mark, Mary, Marie. They don't have to be past. They could be here in the physical world.
Either Maureen, Marianne. There's an M name. Where's the M connection to you?
Does someone have a scar on the foot?
I do.
Thank you. Because your daddy is telling me there's a scar on your foot.
She departed of Alzheimer's or some type of dementia or something of the brain, and that you had to make choices and decisions connected to her departure.
Did anybody have either a brain tumor, brain aneurysm, or a cerebral hemorrhage?
By far, the most powerful tool in the psychological manipulator's tool belt is cold reading. Cold reading is a set of deductive tools that are typically employed by psychological manipulators such as psychics, palm readers, and so on. These tools include Barnum statements, making vague statements that could apply to a vast array of individuals such as, "You have a need to be liked," or "Someone in this audience was in a car accident." This is done in tandem with fishing and observation, whereby the manipulator asks questions or makes statements that elicit a response, providing information that the manipulator can then use to further process, all whilst observing the victim's body language and reactions. Manipulators will often partake in shotgunning by making various generic statements to observe which ones stick and feed off of the subject's positive reinforcements. Lastly, the fora effect, which involves leveraging the tendency of people to accept vague or general statements as being highly accurate for themselves personally. The fora effect was aptly named after 20th century American psychologist Bertram Fora, who justifiably labeled this effect as the fallacy of personal validation. Famed magician and author James Randi allocated tireless and extensive efforts to disprove psychics and their manipulative tactics.
Bob, the comment very briefly is that I have gone through many hundreds of these tests with many hundreds of people who claim to have psychic powers. And quite frankly, it's more or less the same story every time. When a simple, direct, very uncomplicated protocol is used and the control is applied, the psychic forces don't seem to be present, if indeed they are ever present at all.
Notice in the following clips how a failed example of cold reading is employed. David Diga Hernandez is a highly prominent evangelist who partakes in sermons based on the supposed power of the Holy Spirit that elicits healings, slaying, or being drunk in the Spirit, and Hernandez claims to hear directly from God himself. Often Hernandez will have individuals come up on stage with him and testify of healings experienced during the service. As an exemplary appetizer to the manipulation at play here, notice that not only are all of these supposed healings psychosomatic, i.e. affected by the associated adrenaline of the given environment and suspension of disbelief, but notice how Hernandez holds the microphone, elevated and appropriately for each individual. Yet when it comes to this particular victim, for some strange reason, Hernandez sees it fit to press the individual's chest with the microphone until a supposed slaying in the spirit occurs.
His name is Danny, and he had xaliitis, and it would stop the blood from flowing. And now there's no numbness in his body.
Power of God going through you, sir. It's all over you. Receive it. It's flowing through you now. That's the blood of Jesus. What do you feel on you right now?
I feel the Holy Spirit.
What does it feel like?
Feels
what? I think that answers that.
A partaking individual in a controlled environment led by the power of suggestion. But this is not the example in focus. Notice the failed cold reading in the following interaction.
With you yet? Okay, Pastor Don, what happened?
Pastor David, this young man 8 years ago was in high school playing a sport when he injured his back, and for 8 years the pain was on and off. He said when he was worshiping, the pain now is gone.
The pain has left your back. Pain's gone. I heard it 2 days ago again, and I had a hard time like just walking in general. But as I was like, used to pray in tongues and start. You asked God to make you a preacher?
Hernandez employs a Barnum statement. You asked God to make you a preacher, which is a generic and vague statement for any professing Christian to consider, seeing as most believers inherently desire to share the gospel.
You asked God to make you a preacher? When you were younger. He says, even though you don't remember it, he does.
Hernandez, in parallel, employs fishing and observation, and in this instance, there isn't an overwhelming positive response, hence this individual no longer is given access to the microphone. Hernandez employs another Barnum statement, whilst leveraging the Fora effect. Perhaps you don't remember, sir, but God does.
You were younger. He says, even though you don't remember it, he does.
And clearly, once again, without microphone access, you can hear the victim state, I don't want to.
You were younger. He says, even though you don't remember it, he does. He does. To the nations. God put nations on your heart when you were younger.
Hernandez employs another sidestepping Fora effect, to the nations, which harkens to Matthew chapter 28, whereby Christians believe they are to go to all nations to share the gospel, thus making the victim feel as though, perhaps this is for me, despite saying, I don't want to. Hernandez employs guilt to a biblical association, misdirection, as well as non-verbal body language that involves pointing, awkward silence, and neck extension. All tactics designed to steer intent and employ coercion. All of these victims are resident participants in these sermons and, thus, already predisposed to cognitive dissonance and manipulation due to preconceived belief sets. These kinds of tools can be employed on an individual basis and can be even more powerful within a crowd setting. Enter our scam artist, Chris Reed. According to their website, Chris Reed has a mandate to train and equip believers to find their purpose and role in changing the world. Chris now serves as president and executive director of MorningStar Ministries in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Additionally, in the About Us section of the website can be found the following. Our services are devoted to sound biblical teaching. Reed is one of the supposed biblical prophets of our time who professes to hear succinct and intimate details from God himself as he leads services and prophetic interactions or visions within church services. Yet you will quickly see there is no difference between Reed and cold reading psychics.
The name of either Mary, Margaret.
Is there a Mary person, like a Marie, a Mary? Got a connection to Mary.
And I believe something is like Brian or something B.
There's an older man that you associate with the initial B, an older man who's probably in your family or close to your family.
13121 is a number that has just come to me that I believe is significant.
There's a 2 or a twin connection as well. Does she have 2 children now?
She had 2 more after him.
13601. Is that someone's address? I don't know what that means, but I know it means something.
There's a younger male energy in this section that makes me feel like this would be son, nephew, grandson. There is a Cancer connection that comes up here.
Right over here, I believe it's somewhere. I saw Diana in the spirit.
How do you connect with the number 3? You have 3 children?
I have 2 children.
Is anybody here that has the birthday 228?
According to the Bible, the prophets were capable of delivering supernatural detail that was fulfilled, and the biblical account illustrates that prophets were never wrong. For example, Isaiah prophesied about Cyrus the king 150 years before his reign. In the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 18, however, makes it clear that false prophets in ancient Israel were put to death. And whilst under the new covenant this judiciary punishment does not occur, the standard still applies. One false prophecy does indeed make someone a false prophet and are not to be listened to. Yet it doesn't take too long to realize that Chris Reed, were he in ancient Israel, would not have lived for long.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but this was posted on April Fool's Day of the year 2022, and it's a whole series of predictions about what was going to be taking place very soon. In fact, near the end of the video, Chris says this.
In 2022, 2023, we're going to really begin to see these things unfold. And I've had a few confirmations of this dream since then. I believe I had probably one of the most vivid, detailed dreams that I believe is from the Lord regarding an unfolding of events from this point forward. So I want to share this with you, and I pray that you'll consider sharing this with your friends, telling other people about this, because I believe this is a dream from the Lord and is something that we really need to take heed as a warning to prepare. I had this dream on early morning, March 25th, 2022. The dollar drops 30% in value, and a subtitle to the headline was Mideast Oil Strikes Deal with China Instead of the U.S. I then was given another headline which said, quote, The Perfect Storm, unquote, subtitled, Inflation Reaches a New High. Another person came up to me and handed me another news headline which said, quote, Food Shortage Crisis as Wheat and Bread Imports are at a stalemate, unquote. Another person walked up to me and handed me a headline which read, quote, Israeli and Palestinian two-state solution reached, unquote. And then another person came up to me and gave me a headline which said, quote, Major earthquake hits the middle of the U.S., unquote.
To 2023, we're going to really begin to see these things unfold. And I've had a few confirmations of this dream since then.
Even by testing a small selection of these supposed prophecies, it is incredibly easy to validate Chris Reed as a false prophet. In the time frame that Chris Reed mentioned, the dollar did not drop 30%, inflation did not reach a new high, no Israeli and Palestinian two-state solution reached, and a major earthquake did not hit the middle of the United States of America. Beyond massive inaccuracy and erroneous claims, all in the name of the Lord, Reed also charges thousands of dollars to attend his school of prophecy, even when the Bible clearly states the prophecy was a gift given freely by God at his own choosing, and it was absolutely not a learned ability, let alone one that people charged money for. A gift is a gift, and given by the giver when they so choose. But as you'll now see, it gets far, far worse. During the 2023 Vision Conference on December 30th, Chris employs a generic Barnum statement to a crowd of hundreds of people and dials in on a sweet lady who is obviously already a fan, but who recently lost her longtime husband and is therefore a prime target for emotional manipulation. Pay close attention, however, to the dates that Reed says that God is giving him.
Somebody here on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and I don't know why it was too, but you had a car accident on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. It's like right at that time, you've had a car accident. I sense the person's spirit. It's somewhere like over here. I know you're here. You've had a car accident on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And the Lord, you over there. And was this recent or the year before or what?
It was recent, but then there was something that happened prior to that as well. Another car accident that happened on my 5th wedding anniversary, and then my husband died.
I missed that.
I said I had a car accident on my 5th anniversary, and then a couple months later my husband died, I think from injuries sustained in the accident.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you was in the same.
Yeah, then I was in an accident on the Friday before Christmas.
I see a gray car. I don't know.
Yeah. Silver Volvo.
The most recent one or the one?
Most recent one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notice how the lady, Cheryl, expresses that this car wreck happened recently. Even if this was unclear and she meant Christmas 2023 or Christmas 2022, the Friday before Christmas for either year does not land on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Somebody here on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and I don't know why it was too, but you had a car accident on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
On this detail alone, Chris Reed is a false prophet and is obviously not hearing from God. Yet notice how he no longer makes mention of that specific detail, but moves away from it.
And it's like it's got something to do with, this whole thing started off with about Christmas, right? The wreck right around that time.
I love that whole session because, as we said, the word started out with a car accident involving Christmas time.
But you had a car accident on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
It is seemingly interesting that someone who supposedly hears from the Lord is not only incorrect on the dates of the car wreck, but cannot specify the color of the car.
I see a gray car.
Like I said, I saw the silver car. You said it was a silver Volvo.
For Christmas.
I see a gray car. I don't know.
Yeah. Silver Volvo.
Yeah, that's gray, silver.
The silver car.
Gray car. Gray, silver.
Which just so happens to be one of the most common car colors. Chris fires yet another generic Barnum statement.
There's somebody that's supposed to pray with your stand. It's like a Kathy or a Kathleen. There's somebody here, a Kathy or a Kathleen is supposed to come and pray with her right now. Wherever you are, come up here. I believe it's in this same section. Yeah, right there it is.
Why is it that two women named Kathy appeared to present themselves to pray for Chris's victim, and Chris had only mentioned someone named Kathy needed to pray for Cheryl? Cheryl is an elderly lady who has recently lost her husband and is seeking solitude and love in God. So when she sees one of the Kathys wearing a heart on her sweater, this presents itself as a confirmation to her.
Chris, she has a sweater on with a heart, and since my husband died, the Lord's been sending me hearts, like in tea bags, like even in, like, I said to him one day, Lord, you haven't sent me a heart like in a week, and I'm really lonely. And I went to clean the kitty box, and I have 2 plastic cups. I scooped the clean litter, and it made a shape of a heart.
Wow. And then I call out a woman by the name of Kathleen. Kathy.
And she has a perfect heart on her sweater. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Those are little tokens the Lord sends us.
Despite the ridiculousness of endorsing a poor lady's account of fables and omens, Deuteronomy chapter 18 clearly details Chris's fateful conduct here. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Yet Reed not only goes along with these seemingly ludicrous signs of cat poop shaped hearts, he then invites her on his show to further detail the account.
When I saw her walk up, and I had never met her either, I saw this giant heart. And the Lord has been speaking to me through hearts. I had been praying fervently, Lord, heal my heart. It's broken. Fill me with your love so I can love you more. And I've been praying that prayer since my husband passed. The hearts began shortly after he passed. We had the 40-day corporate fast at Shekinah. I was doing liquids in the day and then a little tiny meal at night, and I got some chicken. And I cut a little tiny piece off and put it in my mouth, and it was all gristle and fat, and I spit it out. And what landed on my plate, now mind you, I live alone, I have nobody to be accountable to, and I wasn't trying to be gross, it was just unpalatable. And what landed on the plate, and I'll have to email you the picture, was a piece of chicken and gristle and skin that was a perfect heart. I mean perfect. Then the part that I talked about about the kitty litter with the heart, the clean kitty litter, how the cup broke and formed a heart.
That's God's
So,
love language, no pun
it
intended,
is.
with you.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
conveying little tokens of his goodness and his mercy and his love.
These are not ludicrous and foul signs of the Lord's adoration for a sweet old lady. They are the inventions of a broken mind who is desperate for love and is subjected to the cruel manipulation of a self-serving false prophet. A man who endorses such conduct to be imposed on the broken, vulnerable, impressionable, or hurting is an abuser who sees it fit to use lies, manipulation, coercion, charge money for what he cannot practice himself, and will all too gladly use whatever detail he can to further embolden his empty throne of prophecy, even if it includes chewed up chicken and cat poop. Pray for Chris Reed. God bless, mad love, and I'll see you on the next one.